Okay, I'm going to start with Victor because you're the legal guy.
Right. So
Walk us through this.
So there's a lot going on. There were lots of objections, as there have been throughout the proceedings. So I want to talk about what we saw today. There's a lot of back and forth about the admissibility of testimony regarding what other people said. And the prosecutor was talking about a co-conspirator exception, which is an important exception when there's a conspiracy trial. We even use it in civil cases as well. There was a bench conference, and at the bench conference, what was happening, and the trial aficionados like me will appreciate what the rule I'm about to talk to your viewers about. Texas Rule of Evidence 104 indicates that when lawyers like Busby are making objections like they're making, the judge has to rule on any preliminary question that goes to the admissibility of evidence. The judge could have allowed voir dire of the witness, but it appears that the lieutenant governor at the bench conference basically ruled on the objection in favor of the defense. And I could tell that by the way the prosecutor pivoted away to another subject.
Well, I got a text message from one of the attorneys that was on, and he says co-conspirators are not, all in caps, hearsay, and that he says all statements by Nate Paul come into any courtroom anywhere in the U.S. You don't have to definitively prove a conspiracy for the admission of evidence. Busby's objection goes to the, quote, weight and credibility for which Busby has the opportunity to cross-examine him upon the statements. But
so you don't have to prove the conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt or by a preponderance of the evidence even to establish the admissibility of the statement under the exception, but there has to be some proffer or some showing that satisfies the court that the statement is admissible under that exception. Personally, I think the exception was established, but obviously this is not a courtroom. This is a Senate impeachment trial.
But he's letting some of it in, but not all of it.
Well, you know, there's some instances today where I'm thinking that should be sustained and it's overruled. That should be overruled and it's sustained. For the most part, it appears that he's trying to get it right. He's consulting with a legal advisor on the rules of evidence.
Bud?
Well, Busby's playing Dan Patrick like an old fiddle. You know, he just, you know, he's gotten his way now. He's convinced Dan Patrick that he can't let Nate Paul be considered a co-conspirator, which is, you know, the basis of the House's prosecution. And so he can't get that across to Dan Patrick yet. Every time something comes up, he's trying to tell Dan Patrick, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And he's trying to tell Dan Patrick the way it works. You know, he's continuously objecting to everything. You know, the clock continues to run, and you know, it just continues to be this, you know, the Tony Busby show. Even though the prosecutor, Erin Epley, is doing an excellent job, she is pushing this witness through. She knows she's on a clock. She's playing a fast game. I wish she'd been questioning some of the witnesses earlier in the trial.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it would have made a big difference because there was a lot of time spent on some of these early witnesses. And now we have to wonder, are we going to get to Laura Olson? Are we going to, I mean, based on the way the clock's been running, probably, but it's going to come down to the wire.
It is going to come down to the wire, and I agree. She has been moving at a rapid fire pace with a witness that you probably wanted to be a lot more methodical and slow with.
Well, the one point is, though, that Rusty Hardin's more effective with the jury. The jury, you know, the old folksy members of the jury, you know, react to the old folksy prosecutor, and they probably also think Erin Epley's a little too clipped and a little too rushed. They probably have the same misogyny that Tony Busby.
Talk about patriarchy.
Well, yes, showing that Tony Busby's showing. So, but you know, Epley is doing a good job, but I'm not sure the Senate appreciates that.
Well, I personally appreciate her approach because I feel like we're moving through these witnesses a lot faster. We're getting where we need to go, and we're not. I guess I got a little tired of the Matlock approach. Let's move it along, guys. I mean, because it just felt like with some of those, it took forever with Mateer and Banger and some of these earlier ones. It felt like we could have moved through this a little quicker, and I mean, you know, Bud, you were saying earlier you didn't think that they haven't what they need to get these senators convict. So, or not convict. I don't use that word. Sustain.
Sustain.
So you know,
The articles.
if you want to get through what you need to get through, you needed to move this case expeditiously.
Well, time is short now, and
Very short.
You need to play fast. You can't run the ball. You have to throw deep, and you have to make first downs, and that's what they've got her in there doing.
What do you think about Victor? About just this testimony about the renovations. How effective was that?
Well, the way I want to talk about that is to comment on how quickly we're moving through this testimony. You want to plan your testimony, your witnesses, so that when you get to testimony like this, she's very effective in being efficient and moving quickly, but you don't want to move this fast. And my impression is that with better clock management, we would have delved more deeply into some of the testimony that we've heard from this witness.
But she kind of doesn't have a choice. She doesn't have a choice.
Doesn't have a
Rusty
choice.
Hardin didn't leave her a choice.
Right. She doesn't have a choice, but in answer to your question, in my view, it's not as effective as it could have been if she could have slowly unwound it with more time.
Yeah, the $20,000 countertops came and went.
Right.
The $14,000 to Brandon Kamek yesterday we dwelt on for 20 minutes, but today the $20,000, was that how much it was?
It was. I wrote down 20,000. Yeah.
The Kamek, I mean, today the $20,000 just was, and then we went from $20,000 to 4 phones to, I mean, it was this.
Well, right. I wanted to hear more about it, but I understand why she had to move on.
Yeah.
She cannot dwell on it.
No, absolutely.
She's got to manage the clock here. We're in the fourth quarter. I mean, I'm not much of a football person, so probably shouldn't speak in football analogies.
You got it right, though.
I mean, I know a little bit. I mean, I am an American here. But was it fourth quarter down to the first yard line, or maybe we're not that close, but we're getting close.
We're getting close.
She is not. They are not in the red zone. I'll put it that way. So.
Well, they have a big witness coming up, and hopefully they can get it into the red zone as far as they're concerned.
Now, let's say I made fun of Tony Busby, hollering, that's not how you do it, that's not how you do it. He is just dragging Dan Patrick around, but let's give him credit. I mean, he's doing a great job as a defense attorney, and he's living up to his reputation.
And he's doing his job.
Yeah, he's doing every bit what he's supposed to be doing, and just all of his constant rapid fire rattling. He's trying to knock Epley off her game. He's trying to disrupt the witness. He's just trying to do everything at this point to make her drag out the questioning and make her use her time.
What do you think about the testimony about Brent Webster asking? Let me go back into my notes here. I want to make sure I get this straight. So Brent Webster asked to meet with him and says, basically tells him that don't meet with the FBI, don't respond, and that he ran the risk of incriminating himself. Victor?
Sort of cringed a little bit when I heard that testimony.
Why'd you cringe?
It's unseemly advice to receive.
I mean, this is the second in command. He is the first assistant attorney general of the state of Texas, and he's still currently that. And he replaces Jeff Mateer. What's the problem with him offering that advice to Drew Wicker?
Well, I don't want to speak to whether it's a problem or not. Certainly, I've used the phrase, and I probably will keep using it. There's some red flags there for sure.
All the lawyers you have on are worried about the negative portrayal of the FBI. Tony Busby wants everybody to think that the FBI can't be trusted. You shouldn't talk to the FBI. The FBI is corrupt. It's Joe Biden's FBI. Don't talk to him. Don't cooperate with him. This is exactly what Tony Busby's message is in his defense, that you can't trust the Democrats' FBI and that Ken Paxton was right in not trusting.
Last I know, as a group, the FBI tends to be FBI agents tend to be more on the conservative side historically. I'm just saying.
There are.
I mean, I know some FBI agents. I mean, they don't strike me as like flaming liberals or anything like that.
Well, everything is topsy-turvy right now in politics and in right and wrong.
And you think that, yeah, sadly, yeah. Victor, do you think that he makes the right decision in terms of getting his own outside counsel?
Oh, I absolutely. If I were in his shoes, I would have done the same thing. You want counsel that's 100% aligned with your interest and that will advocate for you unencumbered by any other interest.
And I'd like to talk about Wicker too, because what an impressive young man. And unlike the whistleblowers, the prosecutors earlier in the trial, who all seemed more like bureaucrats, and they were there and they testified, but some of them really seemed pretty inexperienced for people at their level in the Attorney General's office. Wicker was polished, spoke with deep conviction, did not seem to have any personal animosity toward the Paxtons whatsoever, spoke fondly and never gave an upraised eyebrow or any hint that he disliked Ken Paxton or Senator Paxton.
But he was clearly troubled.
He was bothered. He was worried enough to get his own attorney for safety's sake. He comes from a very conservative background in Prosper. He was Young Americans for Freedom and college Republicans at SMU. This is why some of the college Republicans statewide are not on Ken Paxton's side in this. They know this young man and the kind of strength that he speaks with. He was really a very impressive and calm witness.
What do you make of the fact, Victor, that they kept, and I agree with you, Bud, he is an impressive witness. He's kind of like Missy Carey, Brandon Kamek. And when I'm agreeing with you in the sense that these people come across as they're just telling the truth. They've got nothing to gain here. They're not really. They would prefer not to be here, right? That's how they come across.
It was clear with this young man that he did not want to be there. But we saw some signals that the defense will probably score some points on cross-examination, like towards the end of the examination, the witness testified, I'm not sure that there was malicious intent, kind of throwing that out as a signal that
in terms of the payments from the campaign.
Right. So I think that we will see from this witness that the defense will probably score some admissions on cross-examination.
Or let me quote Tony Busby, you don't know, do you? You don't know what happened, do you? You don't know anything about that. No, you don't, do you? Answer me yes or no. You don't know, do you?
Well, what you're talking about, Bud, is effective cross-examination tactics where you put the words in the witness's mouth, you testify for the witness, and you lead the witness exactly where you want to go. With a witness who is docile and is not sharp, and or a witness that is in your camp, that can work. But when you put words in the witness's mouth and there's really an adversity of interest, you kind of see sparks flying in the courtroom. I don't expect we'll see that here.
What do you think, if you were cross-examining Drew Wicker, what are you going to ask him?
Well, I'm going to go on the theme that about what he doesn't know, or themes about what he doesn't know, what he can't establish a conspiracy, can't establish malicious intent. He can only see what he can see, but he doesn't know what's going on in the general's mind.
Right.
And all he knows is something happened, the kitchen was going to get redone. We've got some emails about it, but we really haven't, pinned that down for sure. I mean, nothing that he said, the fact that somebody has 4 phones, the fact that somebody was seen coming out of an elevator.
A lot of smoke.
Yeah, these things are not, don't really establish even malpractice in office, much less anything else. These are things that, are not that uncommon.
Well, I'm a one phone guy, but I know people with 3 or 4 phones. I mean, it just happens.
I'm a one phone person, mostly because that would be a recipe for me to lose one. I'm always like dropping and losing stuff, so I can just imagine 4 phones. That's just too much.
A man with 4 phones is a busy man.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Clearly. And I mean, and in terms of like wiping the call log, it's not like you couldn't check your phone records.
Yeah, which I'm surprised we haven't heard about that. I mean, what did the phone records show?
Yeah, who was he calling?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not hard to find out. You can't wipe the actual phone records. You can wipe the call log, but you're not going to wipe the phone records.
You can subpoena the phone records, or if you can't come up with them yourself, you can look online and see what the calls were.
So I'm gonna. Earlier we had asked folks to see if they had any questions out there. So I'm gonna run through some of these while we have a moment. So far, who are y'all's favorite witnesses? Who do you think has been the best witnesses so far in the trial?
Well, I like the witness that is testifying currently. He seems to be earnest. He seems to be a person of high character and integrity, and that's what makes a good witness, is believability.
Yeah, I think Brandon Kamek told the story. He wove the House's story as well as anyone has woven it so far. He was the guy dragged in out of nowhere, given a spare phone, not even given a badge or an ID card, and told to go out and present himself as working for the AG's office. You know, if the question before the Senate is whether the office of the Attorney General is well run, whether there's some sort of mishandling of the office, is the definition of impeachment. Let's say the definition of impeachment is whether there's delinquencies or maladministration in the office, according to the Supreme Court.
And have they reached that level?
You know, Brandon Kamek makes a good case for that being the case. Just as far as witnesses, I thought Missy Carey's testimony was emotionally effective and that probably got the senator's attention.
I think for me, it's David Maxwell, the former Texas Ranger, incredibly effective witness. It is Brandon Kamek as well. I can't really pick one. Missy Carey, and of course this witness. Because all of these people strike me as, even though Maxwell is one of the whistleblowers, the other three aren't, and they all strike me as people who just really don't want to be there and just really tried to do the right thing. And Drew Wicker was, kind of placed in a kind of a no-win situation. Imagine being in the middle of all this, and does it seem odd that the Attorney General of the state of Texas would be having this many meetings with a person who's under federal investigation?
I don't have any context to answer the question, but it seems to me to be an issue that at least raises an eyebrow.
It's a judgment thing.
You have to think that 30 years ago there was the trial of Kay Bailey Hutchison, which involved in part her aides and her bag staffer too as well. So the bag man always becomes an important witness in these cases. Drew Wicker, you can see why he was hired and trusted. I think he's very trustworthy.
Well, and it felt like he was kind of sad to leave, but it feels like he felt like he had to.
And the fact that they kept sending him the money, what do we all think of that? Was that an accident? He himself on the stand gave this to the defense. He excused it and said, well, it could have been an innocent mistake. He said that himself. Do we really think it was an innocent mistake, or were they?
Well, because he told them he was still getting the money, and they still sent it.
Right.
I don't know.
Were they buying his silence?
But remember what Busby said? There are no coincidences in Austin.
And that, I think that's a really good callback.
I mean, it doesn't feel coincidental to me. Now proving it's not coincidental, okay. But I would throw that right back in Busby's face.
Now, you said you like David Maxwell, and of course the one problem with Maxwell is that he's part of the big bad DPS.
Right.
And Paxton's
because
defense,
now we can't trust any law enforcement,
you can't
right?
Trust
is that
the DPS
where we're at?
Because you can't challenge DPS. You can't ask questions about law. You can ask questions about law enforcement. So in the DPS, this is where some Texas politics comes in, because the DPS responds to Governor Abbott and answers to Governor Abbott. So when you question someone who's been with the DPS, you're questioning Governor Abbott's office as well. The one key to this is that the DPS has been under challenge and under question all year.
Well, certainly they mishandled Uvalde.
Yeah, you have Democratic senators, Senator Gutierrez, and in the Senate, they've wanted to know all year what was wrong with the DPS and why the DPS can't get things right. So saying you're with the DPS is not exactly an automatic ticket to credibility in the Senate.
We are in an upside down world, aren't we?
It is very much. Texas is completely upside down.
Well, it's not necessarily Texas. I think it's a national phenomenon. So when I started as a prosecutor back in the 90s, the view of law enforcement is totally different than the view of law enforcement today. And that's a result of national events that have occurred over the course of the decades since I've been a prosecutor, many of which have happened in the recent past or the last few years that have caused people to be a bit skeptical about law enforcement.
You know, I guess I have a very complicated view of law enforcement. I mean, I have, my best friend is a retired deputy chief for Dallas. I have,
My best friend's a retired 20-year constable.
I have immense respect for law enforcement. I have also done many, many stories on bad law enforcement. And in fact, in many cases, the stories I've done about, you know, bad law enforcement, it's been other law enforcement that have, you know, tipped me off to the issues that I've done. I think that you have to evaluate people based upon individually. You can't, I don't want people to cast aspersions on my profession and say all journalists do X, Y, Z, right? Because I know most journalists, by and large, to be ethical people that, you know, try to do the right thing. And that's been in my experience with law enforcement. That does not mean that there is not misconduct. That does not mean there are not problems. And it's interesting because over the years, I've seen law enforcement get more professional. I remember being a young, and of course while we're chit-chatting here, I remember being a young reporter in Abilene. I worked for the Abilene Reporter News. And I remember there was these couple of cops that did drug interdiction up on the highways. And I used to go out with them all the time. But what I didn't realize, because I was young, they were racial profiling. I just didn't realize it, right? Because they were always trying to stop Hispanics,
Minorities.
up on the highways, because they were convinced that all the Hispanics up on the highways, you know, must be carrying, 100, pounds of drugs, right? And today I understand that what they were doing was racial profiling, but I didn't have that. It was a different world, right? This was the mid to late 90s, and so I think, there has been an evolution in law enforcement. When I started as a young reporter, there were no cameras, there were no, dash cams didn't exist, body cams didn't exist, none of that stuff existed. And so, I don't know, I just come at it with a really complicated perspective, and it doesn't make sense that all these lawyers, all these people would get together to have some coup against Ken Paxton. That's just what I keep going back to.
Well, because we know and are friends with people, career officers, we know that they're concerned too about professionalism.
Right, they are.
They're concerned about improving training and better professionalism and greater fairness, and most of all about upholding justice. And that's improved over the years, like you say. But look who's being portrayed as the evil empire in this trial. The FBI, most of all, the DPS. Johnny Sutton has repeatedly been pointed out, the lawyer for
right.
the lawyer for the whistleblowers, and then you get down to the political opponents, the Bushes, Texans for Lawsuit Reform, Speaker Phelan. They're all going to come up before the end of the trial.
Victor, how unusual is it? Because one of the things they've elicited from each of the whistleblowers is that they retained Johnny Sutton and that they don't know how much they owe him. It does feel weird to me.
It does. Look, certainly all of my clients know how much they owe me. I send them a monthly bill. And,
you don't feel like you're doing it pro bono.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there are cases that I have pro bono, and the expectation is that there's no payment because it's a pro bono case. But all of my paying clients know what their fees are because we bill them on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't know if they owe money or what they're being owed, perhaps the office of Mr. Sutton needs to tighten things up on the administration side.
Because what they said was, and this has been going on for 3 years, each of them has testified to this, that they don't know what they owe him, they've never discussed fees, and I mean that does feel weird to me. I mean, it feels like he's doing it pro bono. That's what it feels like, but I don't know. I mean,
it's if you talk to a professional responsibility lawyer, they're going to tell you that there should be an engagement letter up front in any engagement, whether it's a pro bono engagement or not, so that the client knows what the expectations are regarding fees and other issues or not. So that is an issue that probably should be looked at by his office if there is a practice of clients not knowing what the expectations are regarding basic issues like fees.
He can say he's doing it for the good of the state of Texas, but I mean, you can't just live on nothing. I mean, how is he paying his mortgage? How is he paying his electric bill? Obviously, he must have a tremendous amount of savings from his long federal career, but
it just felt weird. It did feel weird.
It sounds weird to the trial. This is another factor that'll come back to the jury, that'll be brought up again as part of the grand conspiracy.
Along with George P. Bush.
Along with George P. Bush to make the grand conspiracy to make Nate Paul look terrible when really, obviously, he's somebody who just had an innocent friendship with the Attorney General, don't you know? And all these things they bring up are just coincidences.
Okay, guys,
Looks
we're
like they're about to convene.
gonna take a listen. They're back on the dais.